I sat in the back row of the graduation ceremony at Greenridge University, the spring sun beating down on the sprawling lawn in California. The air was thick with excitement, hundreds of students in black gowns fidgeting in their seats, smiles mixed with nerves. Families and friends filled the bleachers behind us, holding up signs and bouquets. I, Amara Johnson, a 22-year-old senior in education, adjusted my slightly wrinkled gown. It was the best I could manage after hand-washing it last night. My left shoe had a small tear from weekend shifts at the campus cafe near the library. No family by my side. Mom passed 3 years ago, and Dad was back in Chicago, too far and too broke to make the trip. My old phone rested on my lap, ready to capture the moment they called my name. Up front, in the reserved seats for the elite, Emily Davenport sat reapplying her lip gloss. Her blonde hair gleamed under the sunlight, the daughter of the university's board chairman, Mr. Davenport. She looked every bit the part, perfect makeup, designer accessories peeking from under her gown. The principal stepped to the podium, his voice booming through the microphone. Today, we celebrate students who have persevered through the pandemic, through hardships, through their own limits. That's when it happened. Emily stood abruptly, swayed, and collapsed right there on the stage. Screams erupted. A professor rushed to her side. Chaos rippled through the crowd, people standing, murmuring, phones whipping out to record. My heart pounded. Without thinking, I jumped up, my training kicking in. I'd spent semesters in first aid workshops, earning certifications to volunteer at campus events. I weaved through the rows, my gown flapping, heading straight for the stage. "I can help," I muttered under my breath, focusing on her pale face as they tried to rouse her. But as I reached the edge of the platform, a burly man in a black suit, clearly a bodyguard for the Davenports, stepped in front of me, his hand raised like a barrier. "Back off. We don't need outsiders interfering." I stopped short, blinking. "I'm a student here. I have first aid training, I just want to check her pulse." He scanned me head to toe, his expression curling into disdain. "You? Look more like the help than a student." Whispers spread around us like wildfire. A woman in the parents section snickered loudly enough for me to hear. "Who does she think she is, pushing up there near Emily?" My cheeks burned, but I held my ground, eyes locked on Emily as they carried her inside. The sun felt hotter, the crowd stares heavier on my dark skin and braided hair. The words hit me like a slap, sharper than the California sun glaring down on us. "You? Look more like the help than a student." The bodyguard's voice carried across the stage edge, loud enough for the front rows to hear. His eyes raked over me, my dark skin, my neatly braided hair, the simple gown that didn't scream privilege. I felt exposed, like every imperfection was suddenly under a spotlight, the faint scar on my cheek from a childhood fall, the way my hands trembled slightly from adrenaline. I opened my mouth to respond, but the whispers started rolling in like waves. "Who is she?" someone muttered from the bleachers. "Pushing her way up there like she owns the place." A woman in a pearl necklace, probably a parent from the affluent crowd, leaned to her husband and said just loud enough, "These people always trying to insert themselves. Emily doesn't need that kind of help." Her laugh was light, but it cut deep, echoing the casual racism I'd faced since starting at Greenridge, subtle digs in class, assumptions that I was on scholarship because I looked the part. My cheeks burned, not from shame, but from the familiar rage bubbling inside. I'd dealt with this before, professors skipping over me in discussions, classmates assuming I was the janitor when I stayed late in the education building. But here, at graduation, with hundreds of eyes on me? It felt like the whole university was judging. Emily was being lifted now, her limp form carried toward the medical tent by professors and staff. I wanted to shout that I had certifications, Red Cross first aid, CPR training from volunteer shifts at the community center back home. I'd handled fainting spells during campus events, even saved a kid from choking at the cafe once. Instead, I stood frozen, my phone still clutched in my hand. The bodyguard crossed his arms, smirking. "Move along, miss. We've got professionals here." More snickers rippled through the crowd. A guy in the student section whispered to his friend, "Yeah, like she'd know what to do. Probably just wants attention." The words stung, twisting the knife. My value, my skills, reduced to my appearance. I took a step back, forcing my breathing steady, eyes still fixed on Emily's retreating figure. Part of me wanted to walk away, but another part, the one Mom had instilled in me, refused to let this define the day. As the principal called for calm over the speakers, I retreated to my seat, the murmurs following me like shadows. "Not her place," someone hissed. I sat down, heart pounding, wondering if this was how it always would be, invisible until I overstepped. I didn't respond to the bodyguard's sneer or the scattered laughs rippling through the crowd. What good would words do in a moment like this? I'd learned long ago that arguing only made the whispers louder, the judgments sharper. Instead, I took a deliberate step back, my eyes still fixed on Emily as they whisked her away toward the medical tent. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow from what I could see, classic signs of heat exhaustion, nothing a cool compress and some elevation couldn't fix. But they didn't need me, or so they thought. My chest tightened with frustration, but I kept my expression neutral, my hands steady at my sides. A gentle breeze swept across the lawn, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and distant barbecue from the post-ceremony tents. It rustled the banners and knocked something loose from the achievement board nearby, a laminated photo fluttering to the ground like a discarded leaf. No one noticed, all eyes were on the stage or the drama unfolding. I bent down slowly, my gown pooling around me, and picked it up. It was me, Amara Johnson, standing proudly next to a plaque for Student Social Impact Award from last semester. In the photo, I was smiling wide, my braids tied back, holding a certificate for organizing free first aid workshops for underprivileged kids in the community. The irony hit me like a quiet punch. Here I was, proven capable on paper, but reduced to the help in their eyes. I dusted off the photo gently, the glossy surface cool against my fingers. For a second, I considered holding it up, showing them, proving something. But no. That wasn't me. Proof shouldn't be begged for, it should be seen. I slipped it into my pocket, the edges crinkling softly, and straightened up. The principal's voice crackled over the speakers again, urging calm. "Please, everyone, take your seats. The ceremony will resume shortly." The crowd began to settle, murmurs fading into awkward silence. As I turned to head back to my row, my gaze caught a professor's in the front, Dr. Ellis from the Education Department, the one who'd nominated me for that award. He was watching me, his brow furrowed in what looked like confusion or recognition. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I held it, not defiantly, but steadily. He nodded slightly, almost imperceptibly, before turning away. It wasn't much, but it was something, a crack in the invisibility. I walked back to my seat in the last row, the sun warm on my back, heart still racing but resolve hardening. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. After Emily was carried off to the medical tent, the ceremony lurched back into motion, but the air felt thicker, charged with unfinished tension. I sank into my seat in the back row, my phone still warm in my palm from gripping it too tight. The principal droned on about perseverance and future leaders, but the words blurred as whispers snaked through the crowd like vines creeping up a wall. They started soft at first, from the students a few rows ahead, mostly white kids from the sororities and frats, the ones who never glanced my way in class. "Who was that girl rushing the stage?" A girl with perfectly straight hair murmured to her friend, her voice carrying just enough to sting. "Like, seriously, who does she think she is?" Her friend leaned in, giggling under her breath. "Oh, I know her, Amara something. She's the one who works in the cafeteria under the library. Always mopping up spills or whatever. Probably thought she could play hero for attention." My stomach twisted. I kept my eyes forward, pretending to focus on the stage, but their words drilled into me. "The cafeteria?" "Yeah, I worked there, 3 shifts a week to cover tuition after Mom's insurance ran out." But reducing me to the help again? It was the same old script, my dark skin, my practical clothes, making me invisible or suspect. A parent in the bleachers behind me chimed in, her voice sharper, laced with that faux concern adults use to mask judgment. "The stage is for people like Emily." What was she thinking, barging up there? Could have made things worse, causing a scene like that. More heads turned subtly my way, eyes flicking over me before darting back. A guy in a fraternity jacket snorted to his buddy. "Yeah, Davenport's daughter doesn't need some random stepping in. Stick to serving coffee, right?" Laughter bubbled up, low but piercing. I felt the heat rise in my chest, my fists clenching in my lap. These weren't strangers, some were classmates I'd tutored in education seminars, others parents I'd seen at campus events. Yet here, my attempt to help was twisted into intrusion, my presence an anomaly in their polished world. The whispers grew, feeding off each other, turning the sunny lawn into a pressure cooker. A woman nearby adjusted her sunglasses and added fuel, "It's just not appropriate. Know your place, you know?" I sat there, silent, letting it wash over me like I'd done 100 times before, in group projects where my ideas were ignored, or dorm parties where I was the diversity quota. The ceremony continued, names called one by one, applause echoing. But the air around me hummed with their disdain, making every breath feel heavier. I wasn't just Amara anymore, I was the outsider who dared to step forward. As the ceremony dragged on, the principal's voice faded into a distant hum, calling names, and handing out diplomas one by one. Applause rose and fell like waves, but it all felt muffled to me, like I was underwater in a sea of judgment. I stayed in my seat, back straight, eyes forward, refusing to give the whispers the satisfaction of seeing me squirm. My mind replayed the scene over and over, the bodyguard's sneer, the parents' snickers, the way they dismissed me before I could even prove myself. It wasn't new. Growing up in Chicago's South Side, I'd navigated stares and assumptions my whole life. But on graduation day? It burned deeper. Midway through, the assistant principal, a tall, graying man named Mr. Harlan, stepped down from the stage with a stack of commemorative gifts for outstanding students. He moved along the front rows, shaking hands with the usual suspects, valedictorians, scholarship winners, kids from families who donated buildings. Emily's name was called early, even though she was still in the medical tent. Someone accepted on her behalf amid polite claps. I watched, my fingers twisting the edge of my gown. Part of me wanted to stay silent, let it all slide like I always had. But Mom's voice echoed in my head, "Speak up when it matters, baby. Your voice is your power." When Mr. Harlan passed near my section, handing out the last few plaques, I stood quietly and approached him. The crowd was distracted, photos snapping, families cheering. I kept my voice low, professional, no accusation, just offer. Excuse me, sir. If the medical team needs someone with certified first aid training to help in the tent, I'm available. I have Red Cross credentials and experience from campus events. He paused, glancing at me briefly. His eyes flicked over my face, my gown, lingering a second too long on my braids before nodding curtly. We'll call if we need assistance. Thank you. It was polite, but dismissive, like checking a box. No questions about my certifications, no real interest. He moved on without another word. I returned to my seat, the rejection settling heavy in my chest. No one called. Of course not. Why would they, when professionals meant someone who fit their image? Disappointment twisted into quiet resolve. I wasn't doing this for praise, I never had. But the oversight stung, another layer on the pile of microaggressions that made days like this exhausting. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn, and I sat there, waiting for my name, wondering if anyone would ever see beyond the surface. The ceremony pressed on, the principal's voice steady as he transitioned into the highlight reel, a montage of the year's student activities projected on the massive screen behind the stage. Clips flickered by, sports teams celebrating wins, art students unveiling murals, debate clubs and heated arguments. I sat there in my back row seat, the disappointment from Mr. Harlan's brush-off still simmering in my chest. My fingers traced the edge of my phone, scrolling absent-mindedly through old photos of Mom to ground myself. The whispers had died down a bit, but I could feel lingering stares, like pinpricks on my skin. Then, the screen shifted to a familiar scene. It was me, Amara Johnson, in the community center annex last fall, leading a group of underclassmen through a first aid workshop. The video showed me demonstrating how to handle fainting, checking airways, elevating legs, monitoring pulses. Remember, stay calm, panic spreads faster than injury, my voice echoed from the speakers, clear and confident. In the clip, I was kneeling beside a volunteer victim, showing how to apply pressure to stop bleeding, then transitioning to basic psychological support, talk to them gently, reassure them they're safe. The students around me nodded, taking notes, their faces a mix of focus and gratitude. I'd organized that session myself, using my certifications to train peers who'd never had access to such resources growing up. A murmur rippled through the front rows. I froze, my heart skipping as I watched myself on screen. It was just a small segment, maybe 30 seconds, but it felt exposed, like the university was accidentally revealing a piece of me they'd ignored moments ago. Up near the stage, Dr. Ramirez, the health services coordinator, leaned toward the principal, her voice carrying faintly over the audio. Wait, that's the girl from earlier. The black student who tried to help Emily. The principal turned his head, scanning the crowd. His eyes landed on me in the back, widening slightly in recognition. A few heads followed his gaze, professors, a couple of students who'd been in my workshops. The clip ended, fading to the next activity, but the moment hung in the air. Whispers shifted tone. Is that her? Someone near me asked. She looks professional in that video. For the first time that day, the judgment felt cracked, a sliver of doubt creeping in. I didn't smile or wave, I just met the principal's eyes steadily, my chin lifted. It wasn't validation I sought, it was the quiet truth emerging, unbidden, from the shadows where they'd tried to keep me. The sun slanted lower, casting golden hues across the lawn, and I exhaled slowly, feeling the tide begin to turn, even if no one else realized it yet. In the medical tent behind the stage, the air was thick with antiseptic and hushed voices. I wasn't there. I'd stayed in my seat through the rest of the ceremony, clapping mechanically as names were called, my mind replaying the video clip and the principal's fleeting glance. But word spread fast on a campus like Greenridge, especially when it involved the Davenports. A friend from my education cohort, Lena, texted me updates as she volunteered nearby, her messages popping up like urgent alerts. Mr. Davenport stormed in like a force of nature, his expensive suit rumpled from the heat, face flushed redder than the university banners outside. He was the board chairman, the man whose donations funded half the buildings here, and everyone knew not to cross him. Emily lay on a cot, and Ford drip in her arm, looking frail but stable. The nurse shook her head calmly. "It's just heat exhaustion, sir. Nothing serious, she'll be fine with rest and fluids." But Mr. Davenport wasn't listening. His voice boomed, echoing off the canvas walls. And who the hell was that girl who charged the stage like she owned it? No one asked for her help. He paced, fists clenched, glaring at the staff as if they'd orchestrated the whole thing. A student volunteer stammered, "I think it was Amara Johnson, sir. She's a senior. She just wanted to assist." His eyes narrowed, that same disdain I'd seen in the bodyguard's stare now amplified in his. "Amara Johnson? The one who looks like she belongs in the service staff? From now on, no one, no unauthorized personnel, gets near my family at any campus event. You hear me? I don't care if it's a graduation or a damn bake sale. If I see that girl or anyone like her sniffing around again, heads will roll." The room fell silent, the nurse exchanging uneasy glances with the volunteers. Lena's text came through, "He's raging about you. Saying you're a liability. What a jerk." I read it in my seat, the ceremony wrapping up around me. My diploma felt heavy in my hands as I walked off the field later, but his words, relayed through the grapevine, hit harder. It wasn't just dismissal, it was a decree, painting me as a threat simply for offering help. Whispers followed me across the lawn. "Davenport's pissed, says that black girl caused a scene." A professor I'd respected avoided my eyes. The escalation felt personal, like he'd weaponized his power to erase my intent, turning my act of kindness into an infraction. My phone buzzed again, more texts, more rumors. I pocketed it, jaw set, feeling the weight of his authority pressing down, but a spark of defiance ignited inside. This wasn't about Emily anymore, it was about who got to decide worth in a place that claimed to value everyone. That evening, after the ceremony wrapped up in a blur of handshakes and forced smiles, I retreated to my cramped dorm room on the edge of campus. The California sunset painted the walls orange through my thin curtains, but I barely noticed. My diploma sat on the desk, unopened, while I collapsed onto my bed, phone in hand. The day's events replayed in my mind like a bad loop, the bodyguard's blockade, Mr. Davenport's tirade echoing through Lena's texts, the way his words branded me a liability. I felt drained, the weight of their assumptions pressing on me like an invisible force. Scrolling through social media to distract myself, I stumbled on it, a video posted by a junior in the communications department. She'd live-streamed the entire graduation, and the clip of Emily's collapse had gone semi-viral on the campus group chat and Instagram. There I was, frozen in frame, me rushing forward, gown billowing, only to be halted by the suited arm. The caption read, "Chaos at Greenridge grad, girl tries to help, gets shut down." What do you think? Views were climbing, already over 1,000. I hesitated before tapping the comments, bracing for more of the same venom. But as I scrolled, something shifted. The early ones were predictable. Who is she? So pushy. Davenport privilege at its finest. Then, the tone changed. A sophomore I'd never met wrote, "That girl looked so composed. Like she knew exactly what to do. Why block her?" Likes piled up under it. Another, "If they'd let her through, maybe Emily recovers faster. Heat exhaustion needs quick action." A nursing major from my year chimed in, "I took a first aid class with Amara last semester. She's legit, certified and everything. Handled simulations like a pro." My breath caught. Amara, they were naming me now, not just that girl. More comments flooded in. "Watched the activity reel, she's the one in the CPR demo. Super skilled. This smells like bias. Why assume she can't help?" A professor from the health department even replied, "Amara's workshops have trained dozens. Dismissing her was a mistake." The thread grew, shares spreading beyond campus to alumni groups. Doubts about the Davenports crept in, board chairman overreacting. His daughter's fine, but he's banning people? I sat up, heart racing with a mix of relief and wariness. For the first time, strangers were seeing me, not my skin, not my place, but my capabilities. The video's reach amplified the clip from the reel, linking it all together. But I knew it wasn't over. Mr. Davenport's influence loomed large. Still, this crack in the narrative felt like a small victory, voices rising where mine had been silenced. I refreshed the page one more time, watching the support build, wondering if tomorrow would bring change or more backlash. The next morning, I woke to the insistent buzz of my phone, texts from Lena and a few classmates, linking to more shares of the video. The comments had multiplied overnight, a growing chorus questioning the Davenports' handling of the incident. "Amara deserves props," one read. "She's the real MVP from those workshops." It bolstered me a little, but doubt lingered. Social media storms faded fast against real power. I dressed simply, jeans, a neat blouse, my braids pulled back, and headed to the administration building when the email summons arrived, meeting with Principal Hargrove at 10 a.m. Urgent. The office smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, diplomas lining the walls like trophies. Principal Hargrove sat behind his massive desk, his face stern under wire-rimmed glasses. He gestured to the chair opposite without a smile. "Ms. Johnson, thank you for coming. I've been informed of your intervention during yesterday's ceremony. It appears you attempted to access the stage without authorization, potentially violating event safety protocols." I sat straight, meeting his gaze evenly. My heart raced, but I kept my voice calm, drawing on every lesson from Mom about composure under fire. I didn't argue or defend impulsively. Instead, I reached into my bag slowly, pulling out the folder I'd prepared last night after the whispers and videos kept me up. First, the laminated Red Cross certification, earned through nights of study and practice drills. Then, the department commendation for assisting during last winter's flu outbreak, where I'd coordinated aid for quarantined students, checking vitals and distributing supplies. He glanced at them, his brow furrowing slightly, but said nothing. I placed them on his desk and leaned forward just a bit. "I don't need to prove my worth to anyone," I said slowly, each word measured, infused with the quiet strength I'd honed through years of being overlooked. "But I think everyone around deserves to know who can truly help in an emergency." The room fell silent. Hargrove leaned back, his fingers steepled, eyes flicking between the documents and me. I held his stare, unflinching. In that moment, I wasn't just the pushy girl from the stage, I was Amara Johnson, the one who'd volunteered countless hours, the one whose skills had been broadcasted in that reel for all to see. The weight of the online buzz hung unspoken between us, he must have seen it too. Finally, he cleared his throat. "These are impressive. I'll need to review this further." But his tone had shifted, the sternness cracking into something like uncertainty. I nodded, standing to leave, feeling the balance tip. My words weren't a confrontation, they were a mirror, forcing him to reflect on the assumptions that had silenced me. As I walked out, the hallway seemed brighter, the campus less hostile. That single sentence hadn't just defended me, it had planted a seed, one that would grow in the days ahead, challenging the very foundations of who got to be the hero at Greenridge. 2 days after my meeting with Principal Hargrove, I found myself in the university's grand auditorium for the State Board of Education meeting. It was open to the public, but packed with suits, administrators, professors, and board members like Mr. Davenport. I'd come on a whim, drawn by a campus email announcing discussions on student safety protocols. My heart pounded as I slipped into a seat near the middle, blending into the crowd in my simple dress and cardigan. The online buzz had grown, with the video now shared across local news forums, but I wondered if it would amount to anything real. The agenda droned on: budget approvals, curriculum updates. Then, the moderator introduced Dr. Paula Greer, director of the State Department of School Health. She was a tall black woman in her 50s, sharp-suited with silver streaks in her hair, exuding authority I'd only dreamed of. Whispers rippled as she took the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady and commanding, "today, I want to address emergency response in educational settings. We've seen too many incidents where qualified individuals are sidelined due to bias or protocol oversights." My breath caught. She signaled to a tech assistant, and the lights dimmed. The large screen flickered to life, projecting the very video from graduation, the one showing Emily's collapse, my rush forward, and the bodyguard's arm barring me. Gasps echoed through the room. I sank lower in my seat, pulse racing, as the clip played, my calm offer to help, the disdainful dismissal, the crowd's murmurs. It ended with a freeze frame of my face, determined, unflinching. Dr. Greer stepped forward as the lights rose. This footage, circulated widely online, highlights a critical failure. According to state regulations on emergency aid, Section 47.2 of the Education Health Code, any individual with valid certifications has the right to provide assistance in crises, without prior authorization if time is of the essence. She paused, her eyes scanning the audience. In this case, the young woman, Amara Johnson, a certified first aider with commendations for campus service, was denied that right. This isn't just poor judgment, it's a violation that could endanger lives. The room tensed. All eyes turned to Mr. Davenport in the front row, his face paling under the spotlights. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding gazes. Dr. Greer continued, "We must enforce these rules equitably, regardless of appearance or background. I've reviewed Ms. Johnson's credentials, they're exemplary. This incident demands accountability." I sat there, Tim thumping wildly, feeling exposed yet empowered. Whispers now favored me, "That's her, right there." Dr. Greer's presence wasn't just support, it was a tidal wave, crashing against the walls that had kept me out. For the first time, the system seemed to bend toward justice. Dr. Greer's words hung in the auditorium like a challenge, the screen still frozen on that damning frame of me being blocked. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, as eyes darted between her podium and Mr. Davenport's rigid form in the front row. I sat frozen in my seat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, pulse thundering in my ears. Part of me wanted to shrink away from the spotlight, but another part, the one forged through years of quiet battles, held me steady. Then, Principal Hargrove rose slowly from his chair beside the board members. The room shifted focus to him, murmurs rippling like a wave. He adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat into the microphone, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. Dr. Greer raises a valid point about equity in emergency responses. And in light of the evidence presented. He paused, glancing my way. Our eyes met again, just like in his office, but this time, there was no stern dismissal, only a flicker of acknowledgement. I must address the individual at the center of this. Amara Johnson, please stand. My legs felt like lead as I rose, the auditorium's gaze pinning me in place. Whispers intensified, "That's her, the girl from the video." Hargrove continued, his tone measured but firm. "I owe you a public apology, Ms. Johnson. Your attempt to assist during the graduation incident was not only well-intentioned but aligned with your proven expertise. You hold valid Red Cross certifications in first aid and CPR, and you volunteered extensively on campus, including handling 2 unconsciousness cases during last year's finals week." The words washed over me, a mix of vindication and disbelief. My cheeks warmed, but I kept my chin up, eyes scanning the crowd, professors nodding, students leaning forward. Hargrove straightened. "Furthermore, I announce here that Amara Johnson will receive the university's Special Commendation Plaque for exemplary civic responsibility in an emergency situation. This honor recognizes not just your skills, but your courage in stepping forward despite obstacles." Applause erupted, starting slow from the back and building into a roar. Students around me stood, clapping vigorously, some I'd tutored, others from my workshops. A few professors joined, their expressions shifting from neutral to approving. Lena, spotting me from across the aisle, grinned and pumped her fist. The sound swelled, drowning out the earlier doubts, filling the space with something like justice. Mr. Davenport remained seated, his face a mask of stone, but the shift was palpable, the room no longer his domain. Tears pricked my eyes, not from sorrow, but from the raw release of being seen. For once, my dark skin, my background, they didn't erase me, they framed my strength. As the ovation faded, I sat back down, heart swelling, knowing this moment had rewritten the narrative, at least for today. The applause thundered on, a roaring tide that filled the auditorium, but my eyes were locked on Mr. Davenport. He sat rigidly in the front row, his face draining of color, lips pressed into a thin line. The man who'd dismissed me as a liability, who'd wielded his power like a shield for his family, now looked small under the weight of the crowd's shift. His hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white, as if holding on to the remnants of his authority. I stood there amid the ovation, my legs steady but my heart a storm, vindication mixing with the lingering ache of his words. A local news camera swung toward him, the red light blinking like an accusation. Reporters in the back scribbled furiously, phones raised to capture the moment. Whispers cut through the claps, "Davenport's done," someone muttered. Dr. Greer remained at the podium, her gaze steady on him, as if daring him to respond. Then, a board member beside him, an older woman with a stern bob haircut, leaned in close, her voice carrying just enough over the dying applause. "I think you owe her an apology, Edward. Both personally and as chairman." The room hushed, all eyes on him now. Mr. Davenport's jaw tightened, his suit suddenly seeming ill-fitted, rumpled. He rose slowly, like a man climbing to his own scaffold, and turned toward me. The auditorium fell pin-drop silent. I met his gaze, not with triumph, but with the quiet resolve I'd carried since the stage incident. His eyes flickered, regret? Defeat? He cleared his throat, the microphone amplifying the rasp. "Ms. Johnson," he began, voice strained, I was wrong. My reaction during the ceremony, and afterward, was inexcusable. I let assumptions cloud my judgment, and for that, I apologize, to you, and to this board. Murmurs rippled again, nods from the audience. But he wasn't done. He straightened, though his shoulders sagged. "In light of this, and to ensure the integrity of our institution, I will step down from my position as chairman of the board, effective immediately." Gasps echoed, sharp, disbelieving. A reporter called out, "Mr. Davenport, any comment on the bias allegations?" He ignored it, bowing his head slightly toward me before sitting, deflated, like a balloon punctured. The moderator moved to adjourn, but I barely heard. Tears welled, hot and unbidden, not from his words, but from the release. The man who'd tried to erase me had crumbled, his empire of privilege cracked by truth. As the crowd dispersed, whispers turned to discussions of reform. I felt lighter, the weight lifting. Justice wasn't loud, it was this, quiet, inevitable, reshaping everything in its wake. A week later, I walked across the Greenridge University quad under a clear California sky, the campus buzzing with the energy of a new semester's start. Banners fluttered from lampposts, honoring outstanding students, their colors vibrant against the manicured lawns. It was an event to celebrate awards and achievements, but for me, it felt like closure. My steps were slow, deliberate, as I approached the main lecture hall, the very spot where, during graduation, I'd been blocked from helping Emily. The stone pathway felt familiar under my shoes, but everything else had shifted. The stage area, once a barrier of privilege, now bore a new sign bolted to the railing: emergency access route, priority for certified first aid personnel. It was simple, metal and engraved, but it screamed change. I paused, tracing the words with my fingers. This wasn't just policy, it was a direct response to the board meeting, to Dr. Greer's intervention, and to the fallout from Mr. Davenport's resignation. Whispers of reform had spread: mandatory bias training for staff, updated protocols ensuring anyone with credentials could step in during crises. No more assumptions based on looks. As I continued down the path, students passed by. A group of freshmen glanced my way, one nodding respectfully. "Hey, Amara, congrats on the plaque," a sophomore called out, smiling genuinely. No more sidelong stares or murmurs, their eyes held recognition, even admiration. A professor from the education department waved from afar, his expression warm where it had once been indifferent. I returned the gestures with a quiet nod, my heart lighter than it had been in days. I didn't need fanfare or apologies shouted from rooftops. What mattered was this: the subtle shift in how they saw me, how the space that had humiliated me now welcomed capability over appearance. Entering the hall, I took a seat in the middle row, no longer relegated to the back. The air smelled of fresh polish and anticipation. As the event began, I glanced at the stage, remembering the bodyguard's arm, the whispers, Davenport's fall. It all felt distant now, like a storm that had passed, leaving clearer skies. I smiled faintly to myself. No thanks were necessary. The real victory was in their eyes finally seeing me, not as an outsider, but as someone who belonged, who had always belonged. At the student bulletin board in the bustling heart of the Greenridge Quad, I paused during my walk back from the honoring event. The board was a patchwork of flyers, club recruitments, lost and found notices, but one item stood out, a full-color article clipped from the local campus newspaper, pinned prominently at eye level. The headline blared, "Unsung Black Student Shakes Up Board, Sparks Equity Reforms in Campus Emergencies." Below it, my photo from the first aid workshop reel, alongside details of the graduation incident, Dr. Greer's intervention, and Mr. Davenport's resignation. It recounted how my blocked attempt to help had exposed biases, leading to new protocols prioritizing certified individuals over appearances. I stood there quietly, reading it twice, the words sinking in like a balm over old wounds. A group of freshmen clustered nearby, pointing and discussing. "This is huge," one said. "She just wanted to help, and now the whole system's changing." Before I could slip away unnoticed, Professor Ellis, my old advisor from the education department, emerged from a nearby classroom, briefcase in hand. He spotted the group and the article, his eyes lighting up with recognition. He approached, peering over their shoulders. "Ah, the Amara Johnson story. Quite the read, isn't it?" The students turned, nodding eagerly. He adjusted his glasses, voice gentle but firm. "She didn't do any of this for recognition, you know. Amara's always been about the work, volunteering, training others without fanfare. But because of her, you're all learning a vital lesson: judge people by their abilities, not their outsides. That's the real education here at Greenridge." The freshmen murmured agreement, one girl, a wide-eyed Latina with a backpack slung low, whispering to her friend, "I want to sign up for that first aid class she's running at the community club. Sounds badass." Professor Ellis smiled faintly, glancing my way without drawing attention, a subtle nod acknowledging me before he continued down the path. I lingered a moment longer, warmth spreading through me. It wasn't about the article or the praise, it was hearing how my stand rippled outward, inspiring others to see beyond surfaces. As I walked away, the quad felt different, less like a battleground, more like a place where change could take root. Mom would have been proud. That afternoon, I returned to my modest off-campus apartment in the quieter outskirts of the Greenridge area, the California breeze whispering through the cracked window as I unlocked the door. The place was small, a single room with a twin bed, a desk piled with textbooks, and a tiny kitchenette where I'd microwaved countless late-night meals during study sessions. Sunlight slanted in, casting long shadows across the worn carpet, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. My steps were light, the events of the week still buzzing in my veins like a quiet hum of victory. I set my bag down and crossed to the desk, opening the top drawer with a soft creak. There, nestled among old receipts and a few faded photos, was the folded piece of paper I'd carried since Mom's passing. I unfolded it carefully, the edges soft from years of handling. Her handwriting stared back at me, steady and loving. "Help others with everything you know, my girl. No one can steal your true value if you don't let them." It was from a letter she'd written during my freshman year, when I'd called home crying after a professor dismissed my presentation on educational equity for lacking polish. She'd mailed it the next day, her words a lifeline. Tears blurred my vision as I traced the letters, her voice echoing in my mind, warm, unyielding, the anchor that had kept me going through scholarships, side jobs, and silent battles. I folded it back and placed it on the shelf beside my freshly framed diploma, the paper gleaming under the light. Next to it, I added the new plaque from the university, Student of Outstanding Humanitarian Contribution, 2026. The engraved words caught the sun, a tangible echo of the intangible fight. I stepped back, taking in the trio, Mom's note, the degree I'd earned through grit, and the recognition that had come not from seeking it, but from standing firm. No grand speeches or crowds, just this quiet corner, a testament to resilience. Outside, birds chirped in the fading light, and I smiled through the tears. Value wasn't given, it was claimed. And in that moment, I felt whole, ready for whatever came next.